Coming up on today's show, we are bringing you your weekly COVID-19 update, but also we are discussing kids returning back to school. You don't want to miss this show. Hello, darlings, and welcome to Wake Up Well. This is your weekly COVID-19 update. How are you guys doing? I am super excited about this particular show. Listen. Invite, share this broadcast because this is a conversation that you asked for and we have delivered. We are talking to two school administrators about our children going back to school. We have stats from Doc. We have Marty on. Listen, it is going to be a robust and an amazing show today. So come on. Thank you guys so much for joining. Hello, darling. Thank you guys so much for joining. Val, thank you so much for joining, darling. So listen, I don't want to hold the introductions too long because I want to make sure we get into the meat of the matter. And so as you guys know, I am not here by myself. I am always joined with my two amazing co-hosts, Dr. Donovan Christie and Marty Sellers. And so as we bring them on, one of the things that we always do is, what are you grateful for? So in the comments, let us know what you are grateful for today. So as we're coming in, they're going to talk about what they're grateful for, but we want to know what you're grateful for today. So I want to introduce my first co-host, who is Dr. Donovan Christie. We missed him last week. He was in Denver visiting his son, having a great time with his family, and he was also celebrating a big anniversary. Doc, how many years has it been that you and Jackie have been married?
Oh, just 31.
Oh. Yes, so happy anniversary. I love you too. I'm telling you, you guys are just the most amazing couple. You're so kind, you're so sweet, loving to one another. And I'm happy that I get an image. You know, my parents have been married for 40 years, I think. And so to have these couples in my life that show that marriage can work long term, and I just love it. So happy anniversary to you guys.
Thank you so much. And so you know what I'm grateful for, right?
Yes, but tell us.
I'm grateful for my wife of 31 years who hung in there through thick and thin. And you know what we do? We try to keep God and Jesus in the center. So that's exactly what keeps us together, that glue. You know, so I just want to thank him for her and just all the blessings.
Absolutely. Zeta, thank you so much for joining. Zeta's joining from Killeen, Texas. And our next co-host, we talked to him last week. He shared his story. He is well. He is doing great. Martinez Sellers.
Hey.
You know, I should be that person. You know, when they're introducing boxers, like I should be that announcer, right?
The hype woman. Yes.
Martin, how are you? Introducing.
It is so good to see both of you. Doc, congratulations on your anniversary, because people are not making it 31 days, let alone 31 years. So congratulations, definitely.
So Marty, let us know what you're grateful for.
You know, Portia, I am so grateful for you and the amount of response and people that personally contacted me after last week's show just to educate people about it and having that opportunity. So I thank you for the platform that we have with that in order just to share with people the realness and the seriousness about COVID and that it is real and what we have to do. And my son is still feeling some of the residual effects of it. But, you know, we thank God that we're alive, we're healthy, we're well, and I'm just grateful.
Excellent. Hello, darling. Hi, Jasmine. Thank you so much for joining. So you guys, we have a bunch of information to talk about. Let's get in it, Doc. We are going to go with you and some of the questions that we have. Doc is going to step away today after his questions. We're going to miss him, but he will be back next week. So, Doc, let's just talk about the numbers a little bit, because this is the one place that they can come get the numbers once a week. and then
Hey,
push it apart.
And they're accurate because they're from the CDC, right?
Right.
But
right.
who would have thought that, back in mid-March when we first started, this pandemic first started, and then, it peaked somewhere in mid-April, that we would have 145,000 Americans that have passed from this condition. I mean, no one could imagine that, right? Within 4 months, this is what's going on. And now we have over 4 million people with the disease who've had the disease. Luckily, the death rate is not that bad as compared to the case fatality rate, which is, if you get the case, how many of the people who get the case are going to actually perish from the disease? It's quite low when it comes to children, but it's still astronomical when you just think of the sheer numbers, because all it requires is one person, and one of those 145,000 people who have passed is one of my longtime employees' sister, who lives in Peru. And I wanted to just, have a quick moment of silence for her, because her sister is 65. She contracted the disease, went into the hospital, and they essentially, when you get COVID, there's a certain sense of fear, even among healthcare professionals in the U.S. So you can imagine what that's like in a country like Peru. So she was saying that they didn't even want to feed her. She was like put in a room, and she passed within 7 days. And that's very traumatic. We heard of the news while we were in Colorado last week. I think it was Thursday when she passed, but she walked in the hospital, Marty, and she was out by, within 7 days. So this disease is impactful, and it really depends your immunity, your immune system. How are you going to hold that off? How are you going to fight it off? What comorbidities you have? If you have diabetes and heart disease and heart failure and congenital issues, you're going to, you could perish from this disease.
Right.
And so having said that, so the numbers are not looking good. But if you want me to get into the numbers in kids, I can do that. But I'll just lead.
Yeah, I think, Doc, because we do want to focus, one, I'm praying for just, their families, and it's hard.
Right.
And I think the thing is, it almost seems like it's not a thing until it touches you, right? Like we've been doing this since March. We knew it was a thing. I believed it. I knew it wasn't this crazy conspiracy theory. We had people, Doc, in our church who knew people. But I have to say, when it really hit home was when Marty tested positive for me, because he was probably the closest person. I did have an aunt, but she had gotten it from a nursing home. So, we saw that happening, a rehabilitation center. And so when Marty got it, it was like, whoa, anything is possible.
Right.
So, Doc, while we're talking about anything being possible, we hear kids don't get it, kids don't pass it unless they're 10 and up. What are the numbers for the kids, and do they pass the disease, the virus?
Well, I had faith. I had faith in Marty's immune system. I thought that.
Thank you, Doc.
that he was taking. You were following my rules, but you were taking your vitamins and you were getting exercise, you were eating right. So all of that is very, very good. So I had no doubt you would not require hospitalization. You don't want to end up there.
No.
But So in terms of the kids, Portia, as of July 21st, which is 5 days ago now, out of the total amount of cases, kids are responsible for 6.6% of the COVID-19 cases. When you look at the death, though, they're only responsible for 0.1% of all the deaths. So 0.1% of 145,000, 1% would be 1,400. So less than that. So about maybe 140 kids, doing the math right now, that have perished in the United States. So the death fatality rate is pretty low with children, because they tend to get it like a virus, and then it just goes away eventually.
Yeah.
Unless they develop that multi-systemic inflammatory disease that you've heard about, that
Hmm.
some kids do develop. But there are kids that are at higher risk. They're not normal kids. And
Right.
those kids, you seriously have to think about whether or not, and I know we're going to be talking about school openings today.
Hmm.
They really have to, I think every individual child, the parents have to assess whether or not they will allow their kids to go to school
Yeah.
in person, because there's always the online option. Now, if it's going to be mandated that they come to school, that would be something that would not go over quite well. And I think that's why they're leaving it up to a lot of the local governments and the local
Hmm.
communities to make that decision. It's not going to come from the White House and open up all schools, and then we have to jump to that, because I know there would be a lot of pushbacks with that, and you can see that happening already if you just watch CNN or Fox. You'll see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And so we know that the amount of kids that have gotten it is pretty low. But the
mhm,
fact is that they have contracted it, right? And
they
Doc,
have.
you kind of mentioned that besides being at home, school is like the next place where, where they are the longest periods of time. But can they give it? So, I have Miracle and Maddox. Just saying, for instance, can our kids give it to us, right? The
Mm.
kind of the same way they do the flu, because that's kind of what, we've been hearing, is that it should be fine for them to go to school because, one, they don't get it, which we know they do, but even if it is at a lower rate, but can they pass it along?
Absolutely. Well, and that's what's happened to a lot of seniors, especially grandparents that are taking care of their kids after school, after,
Mhm.
they do a lot of that babysitting. And that's what happens. That's actually the bigger risk of
Hmm.
those kids coming into a home that either have someone with diabetes or an altered immune system, or is a senior. And I mean senior, anybody over 40. So, I
Calm
know
down,
you.
Doc. Calm down. We consider anybody that can get an AARP card a senior. Everybody below that is saying.
That's 50. That
Hey,
it's
watch it.
50.
I
That's
got my
50.
AARP card. I love
That's
it.
right. That's what I'm saying. It's coming down. But I say that jokingly. But
Yeah.
if you're older,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, to tell you the truth, if you don't have comorbidities, because your immune system is going to be strong.
Mm.
If you're exercising, if you're
Hmm.
taking the right nutrients, if you
Hmm.
kept your weight down and not acquire all that weight related conditions, including diabetes and
Hmm.
hypertension and depression and everything that comes around from being overweight,
Mhm.
you're going to be okay. But it's if you're not taking care of yourself, it's
That's
going to
good.
affect it's
Yeah.
going to affect you.
I think, Doc, you just said something which is really key, is that, and it's, we have another special ed teacher on here, Trishan. Thank you so much for joining. We actually have a special ed administrator on here, Trishan. So I know you said you're sharing this. We have two administrators that are coming on to talk about that work in the same area that you do. And so, Doc, I think with you giving us those stats, with us understanding
Hmm.
about kids that, yes, they can get it, even if it is at a very, very lower rate. And their chances of recovery are probably highest, but they still can transmit it. And therein
Hmm.
lies the real thing, is that not
Right.
only are kids getting it, but they can transmit it to mom, dad, grandma, great grandmother,
Teachers.
and so teachers,
Sure.
staff,
So
administrators.
here's Right. So here's the scary part, because you remember when we were in April and we had peaked, we had about 44,000 cases per day. That's new cases.
Right.
What's happened in June 1st, we dipped down to about 14,000 cases, and everyone said, "Oh, let's open up, let's do this, let's do that," and they started thinking this thing was gone. And over the space of from June 1st until now, almost the end of July, we are now averaging 60 to 70,000 cases, new cases per day. Now, you can say the death rate hasn't gone up, the death rate, but we're having more deaths per day. We're having like 1,000 deaths, 1,500 deaths per day. That's a lot of people dying on a daily basis.
Right.
But I say that because the surge that we have has practically doubled the pandemic or the increase that we had in April.
Wow.
So we're having almost 1.5 times as much cases per day now. And so here we are, school is getting ready. We thought we'd be down now to 5,000 cases a day or 2,000, and all we have to do is get ready for school.
Mm-hmm.
But we are doing this during the time when our cases are peaking, and there's no evidence of those numbers coming down.
Yeah.
Doc, I was watching a special on CNN, and they said if you take out the reports from that state area of New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, take those three out, then our numbers are even worse than that, because they've done such a fabulous job of trying to maintain it. Because remember, they were the hot spots initially, and now
Correct.
they are the lowest in the nation. And so because they are so low, they're making the rest of the country look better than what it actually is. But if you remove those three states out of the numbers even spike greater than what we want to talk about and everything. And, me living here in California, and then one of our guests, Pastor Sean Stewart, he's in Houston in Texas, and, and Arizona. We're part of the hot spots. We now in California have passed that of New York.
Right.
I saw that. I was thinking you didn't really want that distinction, but
right. But that's the truth.
California is taken over. It's taken over.
Yes.
It's amazing. Yet still, California still has a lower total death rate than New York.
Yes.
Because I think for some reason, and I had a discussion with my son about this a couple of hours earlier. He's still with us with his wife and my 2 grandkids, and it's been a pleasure having them there. But we discussed why so many people died in New York, and it's one of 2 things. He mentioned a good point. One of 2 things is that the fact the virus was more virulent, a more stronger, potent virus. That's one option. The other option is that because it was so early, nobody knew exactly what to do. So they didn't have the immunosuppressive drugs that they did now. Everybody was taking chloroquine, which we know wasn't working. Zithromax, and there's a lot of things that we've known when the pandemic was surging in New York versus now 3 months later. So we're better able. The treatment modalities are pretty good. It's just whether or not you have enough ventilators for people to get the capacity issues that we have right now, even right here in Georgia.
Yeah, I love that, Doc. So because we talked a little bit about Connecticut. I think we're going into that conversation with kids going into school. So Doc, we appreciate you. I know you have to leave. If you want to stay, you're always welcome. But I know you have some other stuff to do. So we appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week. So thank you.
Can't wait.
Thank you. Take care.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
So I want to go into the part that we really were talking about last week. I'm glad that Doc was able to give us those numbers, because I think having people on prior to Doc saying 2 important things. One, children can get the disease. They can get it. There's data that says they can get it, and they can also transmit it. So I think that's important. One of the things Doc said 2 weeks ago was, depending on where you live and those decisions, Doc also provided us with a decision tree from the CDC. So the CDC has put together a PDF decision tree. We're going to put it in the comments. You can take that, go to the link, look at that decision tree as you're making your decisions as well. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bring on two of our administrators that we have. The first person that we're going to bring on is Alberta Brown. She is a middle school and high school administrator. She is also the director of culture and climate at the school where she is, and she hails from Connecticut. She is also a minister as well. So she holds all kind and wears all kind of hats. So Alberta, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Great. And the second person that we're going to bring on is Sean Stewart. That's Pastor Sean Stewart. He is also an administrator as well. He deals with special education. And so I'm so happy that he is here. He is a pastor out of Texas. And so what part of Texas, Pastor Sean, are you in?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay, so Houston. So,
Heat.
we wanted to bring this dynamic team together because I think we had so many questions about people,
Right.
our kids going back to school. What should we do? How should we navigate it? I think I want to hear, Alberta. I'm just going to ask you first. In Connecticut, in the district that you're in, what is the plan for that school system that you're in? Is it digital? Is it in person?
So right now, the governor has stated we will go in full capacity. All students will go back to school, but parents have the option for online learning. So every district has to set up an online learning for all students. So if a parent chooses not to send their child to school, they will have the online option. So that's what the state of Connecticut is doing.
Okay. So then teachers have to go back. I mean, they're mandated to go back now, right? Now that they put that out. So while the teachers have that option, they can't go back. One of the questions that we had, Alberta, around that was, what do educators do that want to keep their kids home and they want to stay home, but now they're mandated to go back. And so what does that look like in that climate? Have you guys kind of talked about that for, teachers who may have pre-existing conditions where their concern is clearly very validated?
So I'm not sure about every school system in district, but there are options. So there are online options for teachers to teach from home. That would include the superintendent, that would include the principal to that district. I know for so many educators that I know that either have compromised immune system or there's someone in their family that has a compromised immune system, their district is giving them options to stay home. And because we have online learning, that is what they're going to be doing. So there's going to be virtual learning, but there are some districts that are not allowing it. And unfortunately, it's forcing teachers and educators to make a decision for a, career that they always loved to now leave it because they have no option, which saddens my heart a lot. And so that is up to the district, that's up to the superintendent, and then the principals of the school.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Wow.
I appreciate what you guys are doing in allowing that so that teachers that do have these pre-existing conditions, I say it on this show, my husband has one, and if he was a teacher, you would have to make that hard decision. Like, is this worth it? But then you're giving up this love, this passion that you have. So, Pastor Sean, Dr. Sean, let's talk a little bit about there in Houston, where the numbers are. Connecticut is kind of the polar opposite of what's happening in some areas of Texas.
Yeah,
and so for and so for Houston, what does that look like for the district or the county that you're in? Are they going hybrid? Is it all in? What's kind of been
So the state of Texas is still a part of what I would like to call its own independent thinking. And so our governor and the Commission of Education has aligned itself with a thinking that at first we were all coming back to school, regardless to what was going on. And then enough people started gaining the attention of the governor and pressure was applied and we shifted in what is happening. So we started offering an online program. So the commissioner came back and said, instead of everyone going forward in school in person, we're now offering where you can go to school online until October 8th or October 12th. And then by October 12th, you have to make a decision on if you're going to bring in some levels of learning or if you're going to remove it all. Meaning that if you're going to bring in phase in-person learning, so then that have kids can come to school and learn, And the programming that we had in place at the time was kids would come to school in person A week, and then we'll have another set of kids come B week, and we would offer synchronous and asynchronous learning. Well, at the moment in Houston, we've hit a whole nother hurdle. Our mayor, along with the Department of Health and our county judge, has instituted an order that we can't come back to school until September 8th because the numbers are so high. So we're having to do a very, very delicate balance of what instruction looks like. I personally am a cancer survivor, so I have a compromised immune system. And so being in the building is detrimental to me in one vein, but then my school district has offered an alternative where if you are immune compromised, if you are pregnant, if you are in a position where you can't go to work, meaning you have multi-generations staying at home with you, they've offered alternatives for you to be home. So the good thing is that in Texas, each independent school district has a lot of flexibility in how they offer the things internally. They just have to meet the state mandate.
Got it. And, Sean, I really want to talk to you a little bit because one of the things here in Georgia is that, in the county that I'm in, literally just a couple of days, there were protests, parents and teachers wanting to go back. Initially what the county did was they sent out this survey, got the survey back, and parents said they wanted the option. But that was also, you got to think this survey was also back in April, May, June, where we were seeing this downfall, right? Where everything was opening up. And now you have these the cases are going up, especially in Gwinnett County, which is one of the counties in Georgia that's the highest cases. So the parents, they're aggravated. They feel like we said what we wanted and you took it away. Some students are, frustrated, and rightfully so for both. But then you have teachers and that are also teachers and staff that are protesting. One of the big questions for you is that parents that have children that receive special or additional resources because they have special needs in schools. And so what does that plan look like? I think more so for a parent of a special needs child or a child that's receiving additional resources in school. How will they get that? And how will the parents be able to navigate in this digital learning with their children?
Okay, so there are a couple of things we have to look at when we have that conversation. First off, if a child, and I think you're speaking to special education, if I'm
Yes, that's correct.
Yes,
okay, special education.
So in special education, there is this thing called an IEP document. It's an individual education plan. It is a legal document between the parent and the school system saying that this is how they will provide services. At any given time, if the district violates that level of the programming, then the parent has a right to file a due process or to go to the school board and say, hey, file here, they're not doing what this document said. That being said, because we went to the online programming, there's a couple of things that should have happened. Look at that IEP document, Portia, like you do when you brought your home. The finance document, once you all agreed, you would pay this amount of money, frequency and duration. X amount of money comes X amount of time every month, right? And if any changes come to that document, the committee has to come back to the table to talk about what those changes are. Cool. That being said, when we look at special ed, the document specifically says how the school will offer services. If we went to the online platform, which is what we have done, then you should have had an IEP meeting where they came back and said, hey, we're going to provide services for Sean 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week from a week. Now, they might not be able to say from 7:30 to 3:30 every day because depending on how the schedule is written, but what they can do is guarantee X amount of minutes a week, X amount of minutes per grading cycle. That should be part of the conversation. If we're going to the online platform, and I can speak for what's happening here in Houston with some of the school districts that I'm working with, we had to have an individual distance learning plan, IDLP, that we developed for special ed students, where we came back and we specifically addressed how that kid would get their pull-out time, meaning their individual specialized time, and how that kid would receive their co-teaching in-class support. And we also had to identify who the teacher would be, when the services would be provided, and how we would track it. Those same things apply federally across the 50 states of the United States. It doesn't change because we are in Texas and she's in Cincinnati or Connecticut. The rule is the rule. The contract is the contract. And we have to provide the same same level of support that
Mm-hmm.
we would in person that we would online. Now, where it gets sketchy at is if you have a kid that's intellectually disabled
Right.
and that kid needs hand over hand supportive services. That's a whole nother level of a conversation versus some kid that is learning disabled in math computations and calculations and needs some
Yes.
help with a calculator, and we can do that online with a couple of other additional resources. So I think we got to kind of get clear about what kind of disability we're supporting, the kind of time that we need to provide, how often that time needs to be provided, and then who will be
Mm-hmm.
responsible for doing it. And the parents have a right to be connected to those people at all times. And if the district is unable to say who that person is, that's problematic in and of itself.
Got it.
That's
Got it. Well, first of all, I'm blown away because I think that puts in perspective, right? My children don't
Yes.
require those resources, but I know that that was a big thing in the district for that. And maybe it wasn't communicated effectively. I can't say yes or no because I don't know. But I think the way that you gave that is, and at the last point where you said a child that needs that hand over hand, is something that they're going to have to, I worry that I know a lot of times when you have special needs children, like you said, with that hand over hand, sometimes there are other underlying comorbidities that put them in a very compromised
Right.
situation if they do go in. So Alberta, I want to speak to you is if a student becomes COVID-19, because you guys are going all the way, would the teacher and all the students in the class have to self-quarantine? And I guess also any staff that they came in contact with, do they have a plan for that?
Yeah, so every school in Connecticut had to submit a plan to the state of Connecticut. And it's true. So if you are exposed to COVID-19, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So you have to have certain plans in place for this. And a lot of times, the buses, they're not 6 feet apart. Who's watching the children on the bus? And so all of those seats now are going into classes. For our specific school, we're going to have cluster of students that are staying with their teachers at all times. No one will be out. So cross-contamination is not happening. But what happens is if one student comes in there that is exposed, then everyone that student has been in contact with has to quarantine for 2 weeks. And so we had an incident where one of our districts opened up summer school and they had one positive case, closed down the whole summer school. And so these are the things that we have to think about and process.
Right.
And due to the fact that, as the doctor said, there's a lot of talk about, students cannot transfer COVID-19, which we know is false. And so we have to really think about that. And it's up to the parent because a lot of parents have to go back to work. Just as Dr. Sean said, there are parents that don't know how to educate their children with special needs. And there's also a 504 plan. And so parents don't know their right. And I'm glad Dr. Sean let them know that if it is something that is being violated, they can request a PPT meeting to discuss how the district and that school assist them with their special needs child or through the IEP program.
Absolutely. I love that. I want to go back because we do have Marty. And so Marty specializes in mental health. And I think all of this has to, it's so much, I think, involved, right? When we're talking about our kids need to be educated, I actually think too, on the one hand, we'll see too what our education system, where it's broken. We already see some areas, but some of the antiquated teaching aspects of it and what our kids need, different kids. But I think from more than just an educational standpoint, there's a mental health standpoint for children that don't have IEPs, as well as for children that do. So Marty, let's go back to kind of that IEP conversation and helping parents, like empowering them through this from a mental health standpoint. I'm home and I got to take on this homeschool, which is harder when my kids may need extra tutoring, extra support. Like, what does that look like for a parent and empowering them mentally?
Yeah, that's great. And I'm so glad, thank you. And I'm so glad that Dr. Sean mentioned that, because a lot of times as parents, we don't realize the rights that we have in protecting our children, especially those that have IEPs. And so we don't know that how to, my mantra, Portia, speak up, speak out, and live. We don't know how to speak up and say, hey, something doesn't feel right. We don't know how to speak out about that in order to help our children to live and get the best education system that they can. And as a mental health professional, in that, I attend a lot of IEPs to advocate for our children and our youth, because they will try and railroad you if you're not savvy of it. Because anytime you request an IEP down at the district, that time clock starts immediately. They got 30 days to respond to it with that. So I'm glad that Pastor Sean and Dr. Sean had talked about that, and Alberta as well, because it's very important that if you have that IEP, pull it out. And if your kids are seeing a counselor at the school as well, pull them in on the IEP. Make sure that they're getting their weekly sessions in that as well, because our kids are going through a lot of anxiety. Our kids are going through a lot of depression. This is a lot of adjustment disorder that they're going through with that as well. And as much as we like to say that this generation are so computer and all that savvy, they're computer savvy with Instagram and their gaming systems, but maybe not with Google Docs and some of these other things. So that can cause anxiety with that as well. But it's so important that we get that, what I like to say, that child family team group together, so that we're all talking the same language. And I tell parents all the time, it's so important that you become an advocate for your child. And if you don't know, speak up until you get the understanding and get the right questions.
I love that, Marty. I want to go to Trishan because she is actually a special ed teacher. And so, Alberta, I think you can speak to this a little bit too. And I think what she has some concerns, but I think with you figuring out this social and mental aspect of what's happening and planning around this. So she said, I just wrote 9 IEPs toward the end of April, May. I was so concerned about exactly this point, flexibility in the mode of instructions going forward. I'm concerned the validity of those IEPs going forward. So let me go over to Sean really quickly. And then Alberta, I'm going to come back to you too about kind of that social and emotional plan that you talked about. And so Sean, she's concerned about the validity of those IEPs going forward. And so kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
So when we look at this conversation about individual education plans, what she's pointing to is that she wrote so look at it like a treatment plan, but it's an educational plan. She wrote this treatment plan of educational support to a disability for a student that needs it. She's now saying, I can't say that how we're going to deliver this with integrity because I'm not sure how we're going to implement this. And my pushback would be that the tool is only as powerful as the implementer.
Come on.
So good instruction is just good instruction. That's just good instruction. A good teacher is a good teacher, whether they're in person or online. I'm going to just put that out there. So I know there's this reservation about, it's the difference if the kid is in person and online. The only difference is that the kid is sitting in front of me. Good teaching is just good teaching. And so I think we need to also put a frame around this also, that when you write an IEP, there's a couple of other things that we have to talk about. IEP meetings are data-driven. So they're not. A parent has a right, as an advocate, Portia, you stamped it well. A parent has a right to feel anything they want about their child and their child's education. However, the school's responsibility is to bring data to a committee, and that committee internalizes that data and makes decisions as a committee. And so as a parent, I feel a certain way about a thing, but when I bring data to the table, I have to show you the data that I have. And so when we look at the IEP meeting, the one thing I want to also encourage people to do, when you come to the table to tell the school that you have some questions, don't just say, I feel like this is not happening. Bring to the table where you say, Sean did this assignment 6 different times, and he is as heavy as a box of rocks and didn't get it. Show me where it happened, and then that way I can write a prescription to tell you how we're going to fix it. But when we get to the table, we have to also address, and this is something else, there's an anxiety that is not being talked about
Yes.
Kids are internalizing that COVID means death.
Yes.
And we're not talking about the social emotional intelligence that comes with this, because everything we're hearing, and well, I don't know in Connecticut and where y'all are, but in Texas, the information is being spawned based on political partisan, when humans should not be played as pawns on political partisan.
Come on.
This should not be. Should not be. The funding,
and our children shouldn't either.
It is criminal. It is criminal that the White House can go in and every person who walks through that door can be rapidly tested, that the governor can have all of his people rapidly tested, but then you're going to send teachers into a school to be killed based off of a disease that we have the right to manage. So then let's talk about funding, because that's the whole conversation. You're underfunding schools, and then you want us to perform at high levels of proficiency with low levels of funding, and then demand outcome. And then my only issue with DeVos is this. I had to get certified to teach. I had to get certified as an administrator. I had to get certified. I don't just have license. I have licensure and certification attached to my name. And I answer to someone who does not have the competency of an ant running away from a storm, telling me how to run a school. I said what I said. That's why I passed in Texas. I said what I said. I am answering to someone who does not have the skill set to lead herself out of a J.C. Penney, much less into a school district.
It's so funny you said that, because one of the things that here we want to, I have my own feelings, right? But one of the things here, we want to make sure we give the data. So at the beginning, we had Doc on. Doc said, kids get this disease. So when you have the communication that kids don't get it and people don't know, right? Because honestly, we believe whatever political party, we believe they're going to tell us the truth. Some people are like, no, this don't, but we're going to believe most likely where our biases are. Right. So if you tell me kids are not getting this, then I'm going to believe that anything else that's coming in that's controlling that narrative is lying, because I believe you. And so
I'm going to support you on this. If you believe we should open schools, bring Barron to the closest public school we have, enroll him, and then tell me if in fact you still believe in the public school.
Come on.
Exactly.
That's another conversation we got to talk about. You want social distancing, right? How am I supposed to take a classroom that's built to hold 32 kids, put them 6 feet apart, and then bring in and then social distance? And better yet, if 82% of my district relies on the school bus, how does social distancing look like that? Because you don't fund us enough to run the buses as it is.
Yeah. So, and that's why I said it's important to have that data. Kids do get this, and kids can transfer it. So that's the bottom line, right? That is the baseline, is because that's been the fight. Kids get this and they can transfer it. So Alberta, you and your team have been working on, Sean said it, this emotional and this social plan.
Right.
What does that look like? And even if we don't have it in our schools, how can we take what you guys are doing and implement it? My kids, I have a child that's extremely creative. She wants to go back to school. She's missing her friends. She's missing that social aspect. But I also have a child that is okay with being homeschooled. But I also know that one of the reasons is because COVID is scary, So how do we manage that as a parent? How do I manage that social and emotional aspect of this teaching, but also keeping them, emotionally okay?
Okay. So there's a couple of things. I know we are talking about educating our students, but there's a lot of students that are coming from trauma. We're not dealing with that. And so as a director of climate and culture for my school, we have to think about how do we support our children's social and emotional learning? Because guess what? There's no teaching going on if someone is dealing with trauma, if we are scared of what's going on. And I always tell teachers, you can't teach people that you're afraid of. And so what has gone on before this pandemic has started? Were there classroom management? So now with the trauma, with just like Dr. Sean said, students are scared. They think that they're going to die. Many are asymptomatic. So I'm coming in, I don't have a TIM, I'm fine. And now I give it to the teacher who now is giving it to other students. And now what happens then? And so all districts should have a social and emotional plan, not only for
that's good.
students, for teachers. And that is
Oh, that's so
basically
good.
Yes.
in making sure that the climate is positive, that we're developing healthy relationships with students so that they can talk and learn. And that has to be a part and woven in the educational day. You cannot just teach with all these things going on at home. But let's talk about something else that nobody's talking about: systematic racism. So now they're seeing all these things going on, and predominantly who's teaching them? White teachers are teaching them. And so have we embraced our teachers to understand, don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. Are we doing diversity, belonging, and inclusive equity training for our teachers before they come in? I know our district is, my charter school is. We're also setting up emotional learning woven into our daily routine. And not only that, but when COVID ended, I was not there, but my team developed Keep Calm and Culture program, which was going through even during the online learning and even during the summer, because students are going through. And not only that, but parents are getting frustrated, yelling, doing so many things. We're not even talking about the abuse and neglect that's going on, but we want to teach, but we're not dealing with that. And like Dr. Sean said, we're underfunded, but we're expected to operate on 100. How?
On an optimum level.
Y'all good tonight.
I just have to add this. My district is one of the largest achievement gaps. Bridgeport to I think it's Greenwich. Okay, so my daughters are in open choice. They go to a suburban school while I'm teaching in a underrepresented, not educated system. And so let me tell you, I have family members and friends and people in my congregation that their children were not being taught. My girls were getting everything. They got computers, laptops, they got everything. They got one-on-one learning and not being a part of SPED. So what are we doing, especially who is being affected? Our children Black and brown children are being affected. And then we have this stigma about therapy and counseling that needs to go on. And we need to encourage, if you have insurance, your children should be a part of talking. What's the doctor? What doctor looking good, just got over COVID? What is the name again? I saw about
Marty.
We need to be seeing Dr. Marty's in this world. Sign them up. If you got insurance, sign them up. They need to speak to someone. Parents need to speak to someone. We're not talking about.
I agree.
I know that.
Let's go ahead and get on this also. School districts now have resources, especially
they
if
do.
they're Title I school district. They have, let me say that again. If you are in a Title I school district, there are resources that are available to you.
Dr. Sean, tell us what a Title I is before you go any further so that people know.
A Title I school district is a school that is over 90% free and reduced lunch. So if you fill out the lunch application and you fill it out and say your son or daughter needs to qualify for free and reduced lunch, and they get it. That means that 90% of the school is Title I, and then that gives the school a whole bunch of other funding that pays for other resources that you don't see. But the reason you don't know is because you don't ask. And I want to get on something real quick. As soon as you get out your pride and get out your own self-way and go ask for the help that you know you need, not the help that you don't want folk to know you need, you will begin to advocate for not just yourself, but for your children also. Poverty and mental illness is taught because we refuse to go address it.
That's so good. It's so funny you say that, Dr. Sean, is because I had no idea what a Title I school was, right? And so for so long, my kids went to public school. Now that, this is happening for this first semester, they'll go into the public school. But I said private school, but I think I said private school, right? Did I say private school? Yeah, they went to private school. And so
now going to public.
Yeah, so they've been going to private. And so for this next, as we're integrating and figuring out what to do, they're going to go to the public school. However, I know my district is one of the best in Georgia. But the thing is that when you say, I'm going to pull funding from your school, if you don't open up, those Title I schools are the first ones to get hit.
Yes,
so now you're making sense
really
about
means.
that. Yeah,
because he really can't even do that because state funding is the leading guide in fund. So then the only money he can take is Title I. Yep. Is federal money. Title I is special ed funding. So then let's talk about something. When we talk about special ed funding, so let's put something in place.
Yes.
The only difference between GT and special ed is a code. You still on the special ed side of the spectrum when it comes to funding. So when you walk around here screaming, oh, when you start screaming, your child is GT, yeah, in the funding side, that's special ed. Anything outside of the general ed classroom is special ed
Special
funding.
education.
So when you start saying, yes, so special ed funding is not just the kids who sit in the salary room with the helmet on. Special ed funding is also the kid that's in the room that's GT. So the funding mechanism is still the same. My push is this. If you can be in a great school district portion, but you might have a Title I school in your district and not even do it.
So, but and that is true, like even when we know that there are kids that don't have laptops. And I mean, there is just so much to get into in here, but you guys bring up some great things because I'm thinking how are you taking money? But it makes sense, right? That let's go to these underfunded schools already that are mostly Black and brown students. Let's say that, because when you get to other schools where parents are investing money, where they are throwing money at the schools, they are not worried about that, right? They are not worried about your funding because they can fund their own public schools. Their kids are going to have what they need. They're going to do cohorts. Right. They're going to not have their kids go in, but they're going to have cohorts and special people coming to their schools. So it's almost like you're just throwing our children to the wind, right? Like you're just throwing these underfunded and just the lower socioeconomic schools in areas, and you're just throwing them to the wolves and saying, I want you to go to school, but I'm not going to provide you with the stuff that you need. Like you said, I'm not going to provide you with the mental health information that you need. I'm not going to provide you with the trauma that you need. I'm going to cut funding in the classes that would help a special needs child or special education, or I'm going to cut this. And so I think it's just so very important. Marty, you have something that you talk about safe when we're making these decisions.
Yes.
And so I do want to talk about that a little bit.
It's so important that we, and I love this acronym SAFE, that we are remaining, and what does SAFE is all about? The goal is that it gives you the tools to be successful and ask the right questions and have these conversations as a family unit. Because one of the things that's being underreported as well is child abuse during this thing. And that's a whole nother discussion. But what I'm talking about SAFE, S stands for this. S stands for being safe and sane. How do I be safe and sane? I got to make sure that we're remaining physically safe. I have to make sure that we are staying emotionally safe, as well as during this pandemic that we're staying virally safe as well and sane. How do I stay sane? By having the conversations that I need to have with the right people to make sure that I'm getting the right resources, as Pastor Sean and Alberta have been talking about, for the success of my family. A stands for this. A stands for we have to be alert. We can no longer just go by the wayside. Dot your I's and cross your T's. Be alert. Check out what the district and your teachers and all of them are telling you, especially if you have children that has 504 plans and IEPs. So when we're doing that, F stands for this. When we're talking about in the safe, F stands for, hold on, I got my glasses on. Yeah, that's right. Facing our fears. That's it. We have to face our fears, like Dr. Sean was saying. We have to stop allowing our pride to stop us from getting the resources that we definitely need in order for the success of our children. We have to start building economic and the administrators in remaining safe with that. And effective communication doesn't mean that I'm bullying. It means that I'm asking the questions that I need in order for the success of my family. Hey, if you don't have a computer and tell them, I don't have a computer. I need a computer. I need a hotspot. I need whatever I need to do. And so in communicating that, what our saying has always been this: a closed mouth doesn't get fed. Open your mouth and say something.
That's so good, Marty. I appreciate that. Sean and Alberta, I'm going to let both of you guys kind of answer this question. There's so much to unpack and talk about. But I think as we are moving forward with kids, distance learning or being at home, how can parents and students be successful? What are some of, how can we use that safe? What are some of the things that we can go to the school and ask about to be successful in this? Alberta, I'll let you kind of talk through that.
Okay. So one of the things is Marty just, basically summed it up with safe. And I wanted to make sure that parents knew how to ask the right questions to ensure that they knew how to address things that are going on. Make sure that you have, the proper equipment. If you need a hotspot, if you are not getting fed, if that was the only way you were feeding your child breakfast and lunch is through the school system, then ask. Because there are programs where they will provide food. They will support you. They have resources. Our number is 211, but I don't know what the other states are. But if you know that you got these certain services, ask the questions. Ask how they're supporting teachers that have dealt with trauma and anxiety. Teachers that have already, how are you supporting the teachers that are dealing with this, being in a class all day long? How are you supporting my child if they need to take a break? If we don't have a mask, if you don't have the proper, PPE, you need to ask. These are the questions that you need to ask. You don't need to be prideful. I don't know how my child is being taught. I don't understand it. My child is having a lot of questions because if you don't ask, a squeaky wheel gets oiled. Someone that does not say anything, those answers will not come. And by you asking them, then you'll be an advocate for more than just your child, but the community. And we need to start thinking about this as a community, especially for our Black and brown children, not leaving anyone else out of this equation. But a lot of our children in our community are suffering because either the stigma or the pride that we're not asking questions. So I would just ask the questions and don't be prideful.
I love that. Thank you so much. Dr. Sean, how can we, parents and students, how can we be successful while distance learning? You've given just some great points, but I do want to hear kind of what is your thought around what's a takeaway that I can take away and, to be successful while my kids are distance learning?
Portia, there are a couple of things I want to say. First off, your children are not your children. They're our children. We share them. As an educator, I spend more time with your child in 187 days than you do in the 365 that we have. So we share your children. So teachers take it personally when we talk about, if you listen to some good teachers don't refer to them as those kids. If you hear someone say that, that person usually is not an educator. Because when you listen to an educator, the educator has possessive singular or possessive plural, meaning that those are my kids, those are our kids. When a teacher is sick, they're trying to get back to my kids. So I want to preface this conversation by saying that when you talk about education, I want to give you a principle called equitable exchange. Equitable exchange in education is that I will not take out of you what I have not invested in you.
That's good.
I will not take out of you what I have not invested in you. And so when we look at the principle of what's happening right now, the principle is very simple, equitable exchange. We now have to plow through the political foolishness and then start dealing with the education of our staff, our students, and their parents. All three of those things together deal with the platform of advancing access for students. We have to level the playing field now. And so I think a couple of things we need to talk about. One, parents, yes, this is going to be rough, but it's doable. Two, you are a parent, so endurance is already built in you. Be prepared. This is a journey. This is not just a stop and go. Number three, the next thing you got to own, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you don't know, somebody does. And I'm going to tell you this. I tell all of my parents, especially my special ed parents, it's not your job to be proficient in special ed. It's your job to be proficient in parenting. You leave the special ed to me. Come find me from whichever rock I'm under and ask me the question and then give me time to go find the answer. Don't assume because I did not respond immediately that I'm ignoring your question. It's one of me to the 1,700 of y'all I'm working with, so I need a minute to go get to your email and to get you an answer. The fourth thing I want to tell you is that don't be afraid to go and say that you need this level of resource because you see your child is not showing success. It's okay. And then let me say this. You're not supposed to be able to teach. The first teacher a kid ever had was his parent. First teacher a kid ever had was his parent. After you finish teaching the home skills, it's the school responsibility to download the rest. Partner with the school. Y'all become partners. Do this thing together. It's a marriage. And in a marriage, you have ups and downs and everything in the middle. You're not going to like every answer I give because Sean ain't going to always be successful in every test I give. Sean not going to always master every skill I teach. But Sean will show measured progress. And if I can take a bunch of pieces of progress and compound it, I'll show you a mark of success. So when you're
That's
going through this,
good.
remember, it's going to take a while. It's going to take some stress. You're going to be mad, and being mad is okay. Being angry is okay too. But I'm going to show you something. If you want your child to learn how to be a positive contributor to the community, watch how your child observes how you process your anger and your upsetness with the school.
That's so
Because
good.
what you do at home is what your child will project to the teacher when they get to the school.
That's true.
That is
I
so
love
good.
that. Marty, you're in here. I don't want to leave you out because
You
you
are
have so
fine.
much knowledge. How are we successful mentally? I love what Alberta said. I love what Dr. Sean said. Just so much,
Yes.
that I think our parents can take with us, but not only our parents, because some of our parents are teachers, right? And so I think hearing this information again, maybe from somebody else, empowers you a little bit more to know that I have help. And I think that what you guys have brought is the fact that you are not doing this alone. And so when you see those emails or that communication that just goes out and says your child is going to be digitally learning, they're going to be on Zoom, as a parent, you're like, I'm out here by myself. I am out here by myself. And I'm just going to say this. I know we're wrapping up, Marty. I'm going to ask you one last question. When we went to the digital learning, my daughter had just started this new school. She had only been in the school for 3 weeks, and they had their online platform, but every single teacher had their own secondary platforms for how they give tests, how they review. And literally it was like week 2. And I emailed all of her teachers and I said, listen, I have to raise my hand because she will not have this work done only because we are trying to get our footing. I don't understand the platforms that you're on. I'm confused about whose platform goes where. It's just a lot. If you let me organize this, we will be successful. But I do need that time, and I need you to help me because we're new to all of this, right? And one of her teachers did not email me back. She called me, and she said, when I read your email, I said, I have to call this parent. And she talked to me, not just from not just as my daughter's educator, but as a mom. As a mom. And she said, listen, we know. She said, it's hard for me. I'm an educator. I have 2 kids and I'm still trying to figure it out. And so, and honestly, she didn't give me a tool, a new thing to do, but knowing that I was heard, that I was seen, and that I mattered, that changed that whole scenario for me. And so it opened up that partnership, right? And it opened up that, wow, I'm seen, I'm heard, and I matter. So we're going to get this together and we're going to get through it. So for me, that was kind of my educator moment, but Marty, as a parent, how can parents and students alike, even the staff, I don't want to leave the staff out as they're distance teaching, and coming in and all the stuff they have to deal with. How can we be successful? What is a tool that we can use?
Yes. I think one of the things that as we are entering into what I like to call COVID fatigue, that we take some time and really say, it's okay that I don't have all the answers. It's okay that I'm not okay right now. It's okay that we are navigating through this together. It's okay that I don't have all of the answers. And it's okay because you are going to be, and we are going to be, I love that, successful together. Take a deep breath. Control what you can. Get help with those things that you need help with. And sometimes you just have to walk away from it and say, I can't even deal with this today. But be encouraged and know that you are not alone in this fight, but that we are in this together. So I just want to encourage you in that. Keep the conversation going.
I love it. So, we are ending our time. I don't want to take anyone else's time. But I do, Alberta, I'll come to you. How can we stay in touch with you? Like just your wealth of knowledge. How can we keep in touch with you?
I am on Facebook, Alberta Brown. I also, for women, men, I also have a organization called Edifying Women Eternally, where we edify women in 7 pillars. And we definitely do talk about education, or brownalberta@gmail.com. You can send your questions and just know that ask And it's partnership. It's partnership, just like Dr. Sean has said.
I love that. I love that. So you can find her at Alberta Brown on Facebook or brown.alberta at gmail.com. And
Brown Alberta at Gmail.
Brown Alberta at gmail.com. And Alberta is spelled Alberta. So that is Brown Alberta. And so that's how you find her on Facebook, but then you can also email her. Thank you so much. Pastor Dr. Sean, how can we stay in touch with you? I know you're also going to send me some resources. Listen, he has been so kind. He's going to send us some resources. I'm going to send it out to you. If you are on my email list, you will definitely get it. If not, I need you to text the word wake up to 31996. That's wake up to 31996. And I will make sure that once I get that information, I will send that out to you so that you have all the resources that he has. So Pastor Dr. Sean Stewart, how can we keep in touch with you, sir?
Couple of things. I want to first say gratitude to you, Portia, and to Marty for allowing me to share space with you all on today. I'm so humbled that you would let a little country boy like me all the way from Southeast Texas come hang with all you major players on this thing called the internet. I'm just so humbled that you would let me come join you in this work that we share called Equitable Exchange. Number two, if you're looking for me, I am S-H-O-N, Sean. I am S-H-O-N, Stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T. You can find me on Facebook just like that, Sean Stewart. I'm on Facebook. And if you want to email me, I'm Sean, S-H-O-N .D.Stewart at gmail.com. Holler at me, send me, now let me just tell you up front, I don't do Messenger well, so if you want my undivided attention, email me. If not, if you put it in Messenger, it might sit there a minute. So please be sure to connect with me there because that's how I will connect with you. And then in my closing remarks, I want us all to remember that we lost a legend in the fight for our freedom.
Yeah.
That in the character, don't let his passing be in vain. Be sure to go vote. We need to shift the dynamics of what he stood for by going out to exercise our voice by voting for whoever you believe in. Thank you so much. It has been my pleasure.
You guys are amazing. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on. The information was just, I mean, it was just so much good information. Amazing. I'm like going back to listen to this again because I want to make sure that people have that. And I think you guys have said it over and over again is asking. Ask because you don't know. And sometimes the education system isn't forthcoming in all of it, right? And what you can get, what you have a right to, the information that you have to know. So you guys, I appreciate that so much. I do want to go back. Alberta is actually Alberta J. Brown on Facebook. And again, it is Edifying Women's Empowerment, right, Alberta?
Edifying Women Eternally.
Edifying Women Eternally. Alberta is a minister, and every single day they have prayer on her page for women. So you want to definitely go check that page out, like that page so that you can be connected to women of like minds. And you heard Alberta here, so you already know just her heart and just her love for people. So I just want to thank everybody so much, so very much for being here. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Again, those resources, I did put a link for the CDC Decision Tree, but along with all of the resources that Dr. Sean is going to provide us, I'm also going to give you that decision tree as well as the acronym for SAFE. So if you want that information, you need this information. We need this information. I want you to text the phrase wake up to 31996. Wake up to 31996. If you are already on the list, don't worry about it. You're going to get all the great goodies and resources that you need. So thank you all so much for joining. You guys know how we do. We end every single episode. We end every single show with this declaration. Waking up is automatic. Showing up is intentional. Today I will show up.
Show up. I love it.